The MMA community is full of warriors that are passionate, driven, and occasionally have deluded moments. But who in MMA history made the most bizarre denials or outrageous claims? The 10 most irrational fighter moments in MMA history are listed below. 10. Penn coward tactics. BJ welcomed Nick Diaz back to the UFC after their fight at UFC 137. Of course, there was a big fight, but there wasn't much animosity before it started. They both basically simply discussed how exciting the fight was going to be. You are aware that one of the best fighters in the world is Nick Diaz. One thing to note is that this fight took place at welterweight. When they started to throw down, it was a full-on battle, and Nick unquestionably defeated BJ and beat him up. BJ has never experienced that before. BJ had conceded defeat, and he had even used Nick's locker room afterward. It was surprising because they seemed to be getting along. BJ released a longer tweet 3 months later. He gave the impression that he had abruptly altered his mind about the missing in it. He claimed that Nick only prevailed due to cowardly methods, whatever they may be. BJ would have won if they had started off together. But in actuality, Nick outfought him throughout the fight. At this time, it was also so disconnected from the real fight that it didn't at all enhance BJ's image. 9. Namajunas' game plan. Possibly the best women's division in the sport is the Straw 8 division. Namajunas defeated all of the previous champions, who were all unquestionably deadly in their own right. Carla Esparza, though, was one opponent that she just couldn't seem to defeat. It simply didn't seem like the Cookie Monster would be on Rose's level when their rematch came around until the fight began. After the first round, we all kind of glanced at one another and realized Rose's strategy was probably not going to be successful. It was more than that. What matters is how she and Pat Barry expanded on it on the MMA Hour later. Somewhere along those 5 rounds, she discovered the answer to the question she was looking for. And what was the response? In the end, I wanted to not only succeed, but also to dominate the interview process and stand out from the crowd. Now that there had been blunders, she kept to her plan of action. When a plan doesn't work out, it's quite acceptable. However, when you look back on it after losing, something just doesn't seem to fit. 8. Conor McGregor. Even his parents believed Conor McGregor's claims that he could become a cage fighter, let alone entirely change his life, were illogical because of how ambitious he is. Conor's talk of winning the boxing world championship may have come out as unrealistic. No. But there is a difference between having faith in your skills and accomplishments and, to put it simply, closing your eyes to everything else going on in the world. When he sat down to speak with Stephen A. Smith at ESPN before to the third Poirier fight. I have a 19-1 winning record in mixed martial arts competition. I only keep track of knockouts. I only record wins by knockout. In our business, only a knockout is conclusive. To me, none of the other bad decisions, taps, and other such nonsense matter. I'm coming to chop off a man's head. 7. Nick Diaz. Being disappointed after losing is quite common in any type of competition, especially if you gave everything you have, because an MMA bout isn't really a sport. It's a fight. Nick always appears to have an explanation for why he lost that doesn't seem evident to us. We're not sure if this is a result of his war mentality or if it's one of the reasons he's been able to get back in a cage after difficult defeats. Carlos avoided Nick when he lost to Condit for the interim title. The match was rather contentious. When a man comes out with a game plan that doesn't fit with him visually, you can see in a few instances where it started to work, and Condit would immediately return back to his game plan. Nick said to Bloody Elbow, "I'm not going to accept the fact that this was a loss," as they awarded Condit the victory. After that fight, he was so furious that he briefly retired. However, one of the most irrational reasons for a loss occurred after his title fight against GSP, when George controlled and overpowered Nick. When TMZ caught up with him outside a hotel a few years later, Nick was still lamenting the defeat. 6. Hieron versus Jonathan Goulet. Perhaps the bloodiest battle in the history of Ultimate Fighter took place between 2 up-and-coming fighters making their way through the competition. Hieron put on a show by showcasing a great wrestling game in the opening round. However, Goulet only needed 1 knee to the skull to cause a large wound in the second. Hieron was bleeding profusely while in the lead and landing blows. Many of us believed the medic would end the bout because of the blood all over the octagon. To everyone's surprise, though, the action went on. In the first minute of the third, Goulet delivered one more knee, which caused the referee to call time on the bout. 5. Cain Velasquez versus Antonio Silva. Velasquez sorely needed a fight to put him back in the mix after Junior dos Santos stole his heavyweight title from him. But Antonio Silva, a Brazilian, blocked his path at UFC 160. The battle will be remembered as one of the most lopsided massacres in history. As anticipated, Velasquez got a takedown early on, and then started blasting with ground and pound attacks. Silva was struck with several hard elbows, which immediately covered his face in plasma. The doctor examined the wound before allowing Silva to carry on. Cain kept attacking the wounds, which made the blood spray even more. The battle was then abruptly stopped by the referee. 4. Mark Hunt versus Antonio Bigfoot Silva. We doubt that we've ever witnessed two giants weighing more than 265 pounds pounding each other for 25 minutes, like Mark Hunt and Antonio Silva did at UFC 193. As one of the greatest heavyweight fights ever, the contest will go down in history. Silva is a tough guy, but we didn't anticipate him to take all of the Hunt's bombs. Silva was devouring the shots like cupcakes, although most people would have fallen after the first one. Even flyweight boxers would be envious of how close both fighters came to completing the battle. Despite the fact that both fighters were heavily bleeding, the medical team continued the bout. 3. Ben Askren versus Robbie Lawler. Ben Askren, a former welterweight champion in Bellator and the ONE Championship, faced Robbie Lawler, a former welterweight champion in the UFC, in his UFC debut in 2019. Lawler asserted that he was never in danger during the battle and would have escaped the choke if the bout had continued. It is difficult to judge a fighter's condition when they are in the heat of battle. Lawler was clearly in danger in this situation, but he refused to acknowledge it out of pride. 2. Michael Bisping versus Matt Hamill Bisping. Since their time on The Ultimate Fighter, Hamill had been at odds with one another. Hamill was compelled to leave the championship match due to an injury, while Bisping took home the trophy. As a result, there was a lot of animosity between the two when they finally met in the cage. Although it was a close bout, Hamill appeared to come out on top. With his wrestling, he outclassed Bisping and even put him under multiple submit attempts. Even though the majority of fans think Hamill won the fight easily. 1. Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen. From the first bell, Sonnen applied pressure to Silva and quickly defeated him. As Sonnen pounded away from the top, Silva was forced to spend the majority of the round on his back. With about 2 minutes left in the battle, Silva caught Sonnen with a triangle choke but was unable to finish the job. Then, a positive drug test revealed that Sonnen's testosterone levels during the fight were excessively high. Due to Sonnen's convincing justifications for failing his drug test, the UFC granted an exception for athletes undergoing testosterone replacement therapy. Which fighting moment gave you the most jitters? Please express your thoughts in the following comment box. To receive notifications of new videos, share, subscribe, and like if you enjoyed this video. Goodbye until we meet again.